Thanks for joining. So I used to make yogurt all the time. Some of y'all know that I used to have a farm and a milk cow, and so I had gallons and gallons of milk every day, and I did tons of cooking with it. And I love cooking with dairy. I'm like a dairy aficionado. I love it. I like to make all kinds of different things with it. But I haven't done that in a long time, especially since I started building my business. I don't have a lot of time for making yogurt. It's a little time consuming. But I'm making it today, and I'm super excited about it. Haven't done it in so long that I actually had to like get my recipe out and read the instructions. Like I used to make this every week for years and years and years. And I actually had to get my recipe out, and I'm glad I did, because there's a lot of things that I do like as prep to kind of get ready that makes things go smoother. So I already did that stuff. And the first thing that I always do when I'm getting started is I boil a great big pot of water, and you can see I'm sterilizing my jars. I always store my yogurt in these big half-gallon milk jars or canning jars or whatever, and I have plastic lids for them. So a while ago I boiled water, I poured them into here, and that just makes sure that there isn't any flora and fauna in there that's going to mess with the fermentation process so that your yogurt doesn't set up properly. So that's the first thing that I do, and I just kind of leave it to sit there while I'm cooking the rest of the yogurt. So it's sitting over there. I'm gonna go ahead and throw my milk on. But before I do, or actually while I'm doing that, I'll kind of explain what's going on. So in order to make homemade yogurt, all you really need is milk and some starter. I always use just some yogurt as a starter. You can buy starter from the store, from like cheese making supply places. I've actually never done that. I always use, it's a half a cup per half gallon of yogurt. So half a cup of yogurt per half gallon of milk for your starter. So all you need is a gallon of milk is what I'm using, and a cup of plain yogurt. And you want to make sure it's yogurt that's got all the different strains of bacteria in it, because that's what's going to grow, that's going to thicken it up. The other things you need is a whole bunch of ice. So I always make sure my ice maker is full. And make sure your sink is empty. Mine tends to get full of dishes because I do like to cook, so I'm often in here cooking, and there's often a bunch of dishes in there. And I have teenagers, so who knows where they're going to clean out their bedroom and throw like 20 cups in there and they're going to sit in their bedroom. So I always make sure my sink is clean, because I'm going to have to make an ice bath and cool my yogurt down later, or cool my milk down later. So my sink is clean, it's ready to go. My ice bin is full in the freezer, and I'm going to dump that into my sink in a little bit when it's time to cool the yogurt. You also need a thermometer. So I use this one. I actually just ordered a new one on Amazon because my old one broke, and it's actually crooked. I don't know what's wrong with it. It came dented, and I was like, well, at this stage in the game, I am not sending it back to Amazon and getting a new one. So I'm just keeping it. I just stick it. This little thing on the side allows it to stick on the pot, and so it keeps the temperature. Keeps an eye on the temperature, and we're going to be heating that milk up slowly to 180 degrees, and it's ice cold coming out of the fridge, so it's going to take quite some time to heat up to 180 degrees. The other thing you're going to need is obviously your glass jars that I just showed you, and I also have a small cooler that I use to incubate the yogurt. You can buy like these fancy things online that you can pour your milk and your little bit of yogurt starter in, and it'll keep it at just the right temperature. I find that you're supposed to incubate it at about 120 degrees. So what I do is I take my boiling water and I pour it into my cooler, and then I take my thermometer and I check the temperature, and then I wait, and then I add some cooler water to cool it down to 120 degrees. Once it hits 120 degrees, I will put my yogurt with the starter into the cooler. 6 hours, I let it stand in there with the lid closed for 6 hours, and after 6 hours, you take it out, and it's perfectly fermented yogurt. I'm gonna grab a whisk, and I always just kind of whisk my yogurt and kind of keep it, or my milk, and kind of keep it moving. This is probably gonna take an hour from beginning to end, from just when I started heating up my water to when I had my milk incubating in the cooler. So about an hour. All right, so that's gonna sit there for about, I don't know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, something like that. Then it all foams up at the top, which it's not a big deal, it's just a visual thing. But you don't want it whipped like whipped cream. So just take it easy on the stirring. got 2 degrees to go. It's almost there. So before we put it into the ice bath, it needs to rest for 10 minutes. So in just a minute, we're gonna turn off the heat. Just a minute, we're gonna turn off the heat. Come on, baby. And 180 degrees. All right, bam. Turn this off. And I'm gonna set the timer for 10 minutes. At the end of that 10 minutes, we're gonna sit it in the ice bath. Let it cool down to 120 degrees. And then I'm going to make sure that the water where it's gonna incubate is 120 degrees. One thing I'm gonna do right now is I'm going to go ahead and fill up a pitcher with cool water. And I'm gonna take that cool water and add it to my hot water in here until it gets to be the right temperature. I'm not gonna add it just yet, but I'm gonna have it ready to go. And short people have to climb to get the things they need. There we go. And in just a minute, it'll be time to go ahead and set up the ice bath. I've got the ice in there. I need to add some cool water to it so we can go ahead and set the milk right into that ice bath when it's ready. We've got 1 minute before the milk is ready to put into the ice bath. So I'm now filling up that ice sink with the ice with some water so it's a nice ice bath. I filled up the sink about halfway with water, not quite halfway. I want to go ahead and set this in there. First of all, let's do this. The other thing we want to make sure and do is when we put the milk into the sink for the ice bath, I always put a top on it because I don't want anything splashing in there and getting into our milk. I always like to shake that water off. That water should be distilled. It should have no problem going in there, but I'm a little weird. I'm gonna go ahead and set this in and see how far up the sides the water comes. All right, that's actually perfect. There's my little baby. I'm gonna have to wash my hands now because I had to pet the puppy. Oh, he's so cute. Yeah, you're such a cool baby. I just kind of keep stirring it gently until it drops to 120. Got about 2 degrees to go. And again, if this is too hot, you could possibly kill the bacteria, the beneficial bacteria that you're going to be using to thicken the yogurt. So you want to make sure it's the right temperature. All right, it is 120 degrees. I'm going to set it here on this pad so that the water doesn't drip all over the place. And I'm going to wipe off all the moisture from around the pot. I'm going to remove this. And I'm going to go ahead and pour it into the jars. I'm going to spill this, I always do. This is when your workout comes in handy because this stuff is heavy. I always fill it up just a little bit, and then I take my whisk and I whisk it all together, and then I add the rest of the milk. All right, that looks good. Fill it all the way up. I always have more than I expect. Always just a little bit left in there. All right, I'm gonna cap them And now I'm gonna make sure my temperature in the water bath is the right temperature, okay? So, right now it is 120 degrees. I'm just gonna leave it in there. Don't need to add any more. I thought I was gonna have to, but. So, it is in the incubator, our homemade incubator, which is just a cooler with some hot water heated to 120 degrees. The yogurt is heated to 120 degrees. It's gonna sit in there and incubate for 6 hours, or is it 5 hours? 6 hours, nope. It's gonna sit in there and it's gonna incubate for 6 hours. At the end of 6 hours, I'm gonna take it out. I'm gonna smell it because I like to make sure that it smells good before I stick it in the fridge. It smells really sweet if you've done it right. So I'm gonna set a timer for 6 hours and we'll see how it turns out. Okay, we're back again. It's morning. Our yogurt has incubated for 6 hours. I put it into the refrigerator late last night, and I went ahead and took it out this morning. The one thing you'll notice about your yogurt is there's lots of whey. Can you kind of see how much liquid there is at the top? Sometimes it's like that, sometimes it's not. It really kind of depends on the temperature, but if you play around with it, it's all good, it all tastes good. But sometimes it's just a little bit different. Sometimes it's creamier, sometimes it's a little bit more, they're more like curds in there. It just kind of depends on how it turns out. You can kind of see it's a little clumpy and separated. I'm gonna stir it up and that'll kind of go away. And it'll look much more like what you're used to looking. So homemade yogurt is a little bit thinner than store-bought yogurt because I don't add thickeners to mine. You can add thickeners to it, but I don't like to, so I don't. So I'm just gonna stir it up. And it's really kind of like that drinkable yogurt. And if you puree some strawberries or fresh fruit or whatever, you can make a drinkable yogurt drink out of it, which is really yummy. I use it every morning for my smoothie. Okay, so I stirred it up really well. So you can kind of see it's much smoother and looks more like yogurt now. I'm gonna throw mine into a blender right now. Oh, one thing that's really, really good is putting lime juice and a little maple syrup in it. And it's like key lime pie is kind of what it tastes like, super good. Today we're gonna make a smoothie with it. I put in some fresh strawberries. I always put the fresh berries in first, and then I cover them with the yogurt. Yeah, this is a lot of smoothie. My breakfast, I've had this for breakfast every day for 15 years or so. I'm a creature of habit and I love my yogurt smoothie. I always add a little bit of maple syrup just to sweeten it up a bit. If you have like bananas or something, you don't need that much syrup, but these fruits aren't quite as sweet as a banana. There's my lid. Tighten that down. All right, there we go. Blueberry, strawberry, berry smoothie. Super yum. Thanks for watching. Y'all have a great day.